Alrighty. So we're going to start tonight off with talking about our field experience expectations, talking about checkpoint 2, looking ahead at our schedule, and then going into that midterm review. So I want to touch real quickly on field experience expectations. I just uploaded a new document to our Brightspace page. I'm going to share that on our screen right now. It is a little description of what I'm exactly expecting in our in your virtual experience field journals. So it's in this section on our Brightspace page that is your toolbox. It has all this great stuff for you to pick from. It's this document right here at the top, your expectations. And I've just put together everything we've talked about into one document for you to reference. So as a reminder, you're going to be expected to engage with at least an hour's worth of some type of field experience each week for the remainder of the semester. And when you're keeping your journal, I would like you to, each experience you're include the date, how much time, an explanation, and then a reflection. And your explanation and reflection kind of fit hand in hand. So I've also included that example I shared with you before. This is an example of a podcast. So I included the date, how much time, the title of the podcast I picked, and then my reflection. So it's not too extensive. I just want to be able to read it and see what you got from it. And then you can keep this in a running document, and then you'll turn it all in at the end of the semester. Anyone have questions on expectations? In this document, your directions, I've included like directions for each area where you have options of experiences for, and I've also included the weeks that you're expected to engage with these experiences. So it started this week, and then it will run through the end of our semester until that week of November 30th for every week except the week of Thanksgiving. So the week of Thanksgiving, there's no field experience expectation. So yeah, does anyone have anything about field experiences they want to talk about?
This is Candace. If there are field experiences that aren't in your list, we need to get verification from you that they're acceptable before we use them, correct?
Yes, please. I would love that. Yeah. Okay. Then I can add it to our stuff if other people want to use it and all that great stuff. So, yeah, any other questions?
Where's the list of like acceptable field experiences?
So, I don't, in our Brightspace page, under your virtual field experiences toolbox, I've up in the directions, I've only touched on 4 areas, and I've included resources for you to pick from. So I got some podcasts here. My people that I've asked to make teacher talk videos will be sending me those by this weekend, so those should be uploaded. I've listed some books that you could pick from if you'd like to do a book or something like a book talk as well. That could be an option. Other videos on education. And I'm looking for more stuff to just constantly add to this. So if you are wondering about something you want to do and you're not sure, just send me an email or a message and we can talk about if it works for you.
Would TED Talks be an acceptable video format to use? And if so, how long do you want the videos? They have to be an hour, correct?
Yeah,
right around there.
Yep, so if you want to pick a video that's not an hour, then you could pick several videos, or you could pick a video and something else. So you don't have to pick things that will always take an hour. You can mix and match what you want to do with your time.
So you would like, if we chose like several videos, you want them to be like in the same subject area. So like if you want to like, I'm thinking like writing an IEP, you want us to watch like several IEP movies, right?
Yeah,
No.
if that is what would work for you. If you need help finding anything, I'll be more than happy to work on that too. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
And when do these due every week?
Can you say that again, Brittany?
When are these due every week?
So, I just want you to keep this in one document, and then you'll turn it in at the end of the semester. So if it works for you to do your times on the weekends, then do it on the weekends. Whenever you find time in your schedule. So there's not going to be a weekly due date. It's just going to be at the end of the semester.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate everyone's flexibility with figuring all of this stuff out. There's a lot of unknowns this semester, I'm sure, for everyone. So I just appreciate your flexibility with me and with this new virtual experiences, all that stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to our next topic for tonight. Checkpoint 2. I just want to go over the 3 parts of checkpoint 2 that you're expected to be including. The first is one ETR for your student, and what that'll look like is you're using the template that is provided on Brightspace for you. So you're only completing one of those templates for your one student as a group. The second part is one IEP for your student using that template. So as a group, you'll only submit one IEP. And then lastly is a brief description of the elements in the IEP and ETR and why you selected specific goals, specific assessments, specific services, and your rationale. And that should include at least 2 sources.
Quick question about the IEP portion of the template. How many goals do we need?
That's a great question. It would depend on your student that you've created. I am assuming if you designed a student that had more moderate needs, then you would probably have 2 academic goals, so maybe like a reading and a math goal, and then you would also probably have maybe an occupational therapy goal like handwriting and maybe a speech goal. So around 3 to 4 goals would probably be what you'd be looking at. If your group is confused on that, just send me your case study on your student and I'll get back to you with how many goals would be expected in a real scenario. But if you want to just go with at least 3 goals is probably what all of your case study students would be needing. Are we all okay on that? Yeah, okay. So checkpoint 1 and checkpoint 2 I know are due on the same date. If you would like me to read over anything before your group submits it, I would love to do that if you would like that. And also, if you want me to look at your case study and then tell you what I think should be needed to be seen in your IEP, then absolutely send that to me and I'll absolutely be happy to do that for you. I want to touch on our schedule for the next couple of weeks because we've kind of got some big things coming up and we're not going to be meeting a lot. So tonight we are doing our review, and if you're a graduate student, your graduate outline for your final project is due. Next week on both Tuesday and Thursday, I have parent-teacher conferences, so I will be at my job all day and all night. So we cannot meet either Tuesday or Thursday, unfortunately. So Tuesday will be a portfolio group work time or your independent prep for your midterm. So if as a group you're like, hey, I really want to take this time to study, then take that time to study and prepare. But as a group, if you're like, hey, we got to get turning on this checkpoint, then you can use that time to work. Wednesday, I know we don't normally meet on Wednesdays, but Wednesday the 7th, because I won't be available on Tuesday or Thursday, if you are struggling with something for the midterm or you have any questions, I'll be available next Wednesday from 6:30 to 7:30 for open office hours. So I'll have a Zoom link. I'll post it onto our course page. It's not required that you pop in, but if you're struggling with something and you really want to talk through it, then you can absolutely pop in there. Next Thursday, the 8th, our midterm will open around class time, so at 6:30. Your midterm is due on October 12th, which is the following Monday from when it opens. So you have the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. So you have 5 days to take your midterm exam. So if you have any extenuating circumstances that interfere with you being able to take the midterm when it's open, let me know. We'll figure something out. But you are free to take that midterm any day, anytime you want, as long as it is completed by the 12th of October by 11:59 p.m. unless you have some other type of deal worked out with me. And then Tuesday the 13th of October is a portfolio group work time. So that will be more time for you guys to work. And then Thursday, October 15th, it's going to be a recording of a lecture for chapter 9. So we're kind of going into about 3 weeks where we're not going to be meeting live, but you guys have checkpoint 1 and 2 that is due on the 22nd of October, and you have the midterm. So I feel that you guys individually need time to prepare and rest for your midterm, and then you also need time as a group to prepare and do your work. So that's the justification for our schedule upcoming. Does anyone have any questions or concerns?
Wait, what PowerPoint slide is this one?
I have not uploaded this on
Okay.
Brightspace yet. I made it like at 6:30 tonight. So I will upload it at the end of class tonight. So it's there and it's right at the top for us.
Cool.
Any other schedule concerns? All right, I'm going to move on to the meat and potatoes that everyone has been looking forward to. This is the composition of what your midterm will look like. There will be 5 true and false questions, 15 multiple choice questions, and then 12, I'm calling these written answer questions, but it's not like an extended response. So you're only going to be expected to write maybe 1 or 2 sentences for these answers. So when you see 12 written answers, I don't want anyone to be like, 12 written answers. It's just going to be a simple, flat out, very direct question, and you can definitely answer it in one sentence. If not one, then you can probably answer it in two. So this is what your midterm will look like. I will go over to the study guide. Now, to make this study guide, I wrote out all of the test questions that I wanted to ask, and then I went through and read each question and wrote what the topic of that question was. So every single one of the topics that you'll be asked to demonstrate knowledge on the midterm is in this study guide. So if it's not on this study guide, please don't spend any time relearning or pressing it into your memories, because these are all of the topics that will be on your midterm. So some of the things I want to touch on before we go into any questions. This first one, accommodations to support students, and then it has all these segmented bubbles. These are a series of 3 multiple choice questions, and they're going to have a scenario of a student. And then your question is going to be something like, what is an accommodation you would provide to the student? So, for example, we'll look at the changes in schedule one. So you'll have a nice description to read about a kid that really struggles and has great difficulty in class with changes in the schedule. And so some of the accommodations we can offer to these students who really struggle with monitoring and keeping track of their changes in the schedule is providing them with something like a visual schedule or a visual checklist. Those are great accommodations for our students. So these are these bubbles that kind of have these like limited fine motor skills and integrating social skills. Those are all going to be accommodations scenario-based questions. Anyone have any questions on accommodations in these scenarios? I want to talk about authentic assessments. This was in our assessment chapter, but we didn't talk a lot about it. An authentic assessment is when you ask a student to complete a skill in a natural environment. So if you're working on students with washing their hands after they use the restroom, an authentic assessment would be something like having the student use the restroom and wash their hands and observing them and assessing them in that way. So authentic assessments are real, and you're seeing students use skills in real world settings. This next bullet point on best practices for inclusion. When you're talking about inclusion for students with disabilities, an inclusion would be any time a student with disabilities is in a general education setting or in a setting with peers that do not have IEPs or disabilities. When you're working in inclusion, your student is always your focus. So if there's ever a situation or a problem, your student should always be the first reason and the first area of concern for you to be supporting, to be working with other teachers well, making sure that your students are always the focus. You okay on inclusion and students are our focus? I'm looking through making sure there's some other things that we talked about. When you're looking at your IEP team, we talked about this in our family chapter. When possible, your student is always a member of the IEP team, but when appropriate, they can be invited to the meetings. For example, I had an IEP meeting this past week for one of my students who's in kindergarten. So it is not very practical to invite this student to the IEP meeting. So our student is always a member of our team. And then when practical, and especially when you enter the higher grades like high school, you really want to invite students to meetings if it is appropriate and contextually sound and all that great stuff. So I have touched on topics that I feel like we didn't talk a lot about in class. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the floor for anyone has any questions on any of these you want to talk about or talk through.
Can you go over like the accommodation for supports of students just a little bit more? I'm just kind of, I don't know.
Mhm. Yeah. So anytime we are providing an accommodation, we are just giving our students support to help them access the general education classroom. So an accommodation can be anything from giving more time to complete things or giving a student an adapted pencil to use. So if we're talking about a student with limited fine motor skills, that might be, if a student has limited fine motor skills, that means they probably struggle to hold the pencil, grasp it tightly enough to write things. They probably have trouble writing or difficulty producing writing that they can reread. So if you're taking notes in class, a good accommodation to offer a student with limited fine motor skills would be something like a talk-to-text device. So a student can talk into their computer and it'll type it all up for them. My students love using that this year. So talk-to-text is something that's a great accommodation and really easy to use now with all of our technology for our students that really struggle with a handwriting piece and producing written work. Does that help?
Yeah.
Yeah. So these questions, I know that this, as I'm talking about it, it seems vague, but these are going to be very straightforward, and you're going to know, because you all are good educators, which accommodation makes sense in this scenario and which one is the best answer. So I'm not trying to trick you up with these questions. So I'm not trying to trick you up, and it will be, I think that will be okay.
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 Okay, so I had a question. I was looking at the study guide and I couldn't find the steps in identifying students who qualify for special education services.
Mhm.
So that's like the one right above the accommodations.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
So I wondered if you could do that one real quick.
Yep. So if you, as a teacher, notice a student who really would benefit from needing some more support, and more support other than just moving through to tier 3 on RTI, you would first request an evaluation. as a teacher, request that evaluation, and then the next step would be that the parents or the guardians of the student have to agree that you can do this assessment and testing on them to see if they qualify for special education services. So I'm going to go ahead and type this. So first you need to request an evaluation. That can either be done by you as a teacher or parent. Then the parents have to okay it. So they agree to an evaluation. And then what happens is the evaluation's done. And that's what your ETR is, your evaluation team report. So parents agree, then an ETR is done, do all the great stuff with an ETR. And then if a student is identified as, yes, they need special education, then you would work on creating your IEP. And then if an ETR, this isn't on your midterm, but just so you know, if you do an ETR and it's like, no, this student doesn't really qualify for any services, then as a school and as a team, you really have to be creative in providing some types of supports that are going to help fill in wherever these gaps are that happened for you guys to even suggest completing an evaluation. You are able to use anything you want to on your midterm. So if you're taking the midterm and you want to pull up this, pull it up. If you want to go back into our other PowerPoints, pull those up. You can go back into your text. Use whatever you need to use to complete your midterm to the best of your ability.
I just wanted to say thanks for that. Really appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
I just wanted to go over universal one more time, just a refresh.
Yeah. So before I go into that, you are so welcome. In the real world, as a teacher, you're never going to be asked to like complete this test, but don't refer to any resources. So it's just not real life for me to ask you to take a midterm and don't use any of your resources and knowledge. You know, good teachers, good students, we know how to find information and use our resources well. So that's why you're free to use whatever you need to do well on this. Okay, so universal supports. These are the things that we provide to all students. So these are also principles of like good teaching. So some types of universal supports that we provide are things like repeating your directions, making students work in groups, maybe providing as a school some type of positive behavior support for your whole school. Universal supports are anything that you provide to all students that is a principle of good teaching. And its purpose is to ensure that all students are getting a good, high quality, successful educational experience without piling on special education accommodations or modifications. Good on that?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
How much time do we have on the exam or the midterm?
You can take as long as you want. I've never taken an exam in Brightspace, but I'm assuming it won't save your progress if you were to leave it. So I'd suggest you set aside enough time that you can take as much time as you need. But
Okay, perfect.
yeah, so
Thank you. Also, is this recording going to be on Brightspace?
Yep.
Okay,
it will be,
perfect.
yeah. Anyone else got any questions? I found one more thing I want to touch on. We talked about this in our task analysis chapter, the difference between using task analysis for purposes of assessment and the difference between a single opportunity and a multiple opportunity method. So we know that in a task analysis is when you take a big, huge task and you break it down step by step. So if your student is really struggling with washing their hands after they use the restroom, then the task analysis would be taking that task and breaking it down step by step. We watched a video about it. There was a video in the PowerPoint on task analysis about this. So once you make a task analysis and you teach it to your student and you work with them through it, you can use the steps as a way to assess what skills students are good at in the task analysis and where they still need to gain strength or gain proficiency in. So a single opportunity method would be you have the task analysis with you and you're watching the student do this, and the first step that they do incorrectly, you stop the assessment. So if your student is starting to wash their hands, they got to step 3, but then they did it wrong, then you'd say, okay, they can only do this task up to step 3. And then your assessment would be over. In a multiple opportunity method, you'd have your task analysis in front of you. Your student would be performing all these steps. And if your student messes up on a step, then you can correct them and say, oh, that's not how you get the soap, or oh, you forgot to get soap. And then they can continue to go through the steps. So a multiple opportunity lets you see where students are messing up, but it also lets them progress through the entire task. So the benefits of doing multiple opportunity is getting to see how many steps in this task analysis a student can successfully do, and they know how to master. And then it gives you those pinpoints of, okay, we really got to work on skill 3, getting that soap out of that soap dispenser. My buddy's not doing this right. So multiple opportunity gives you a more detailed look than single opportunity. Any more questions?
I just wanted to see if you could go over under the functional behavior where it said to be able to identify the A, B, and C of a scenario.
So our functional behavior analyses are what we use to determine why a student is, or determine or make a hypothesis about why a student is performing a specific behavior. So A stands for your antecedent. That's a tricky word to spell. So antecedent. This is anything that's happening before your behavior. So it's anything happening before the behavior. So maybe if before the behavior, the student is refusing to do work. That's what's happening before the behavior happens, your antecedent. Your B stands for the behavior that's occurring. Student flips their desk. And then the C is the consequence. And your consequence, their consequences aren't always negative in this analysis. It's just anything that happens after your behavior. So, for example, let's say I'm going to use the flipping desk scenario because that's happening in my classroom right now. So, my antecedent would be my student is refusing to work. We've got some work avoidance going on. So that's happening before. And the behavior is they flip their desk. The consequence after that might be they're sent to the calm down room. Or they're put into a timeout or something like that. So it's something that's happening after your behavior. And this might be multiple things. So it might be sent to the calm down room. They might also throw a fit. And those are your three parts, your A, B, and C of a scenario. So this question on your exam is going to be, you're going to have a scenario and you're going to have to say, all right, here's what the A would be, here's the B, and here's the C. And then I believe that question is also going to ask you what the function of the behavior is. And I think I put that, yeah, functions of behaviors are our last one. I just want to remind you all that our text, we only talked about 2 functions of behaviors, and those 2 are to either avoid something or to obtain something. So a student might be avoiding to do work, or they might be obtaining attention or obtaining some food, I don't know. So are you okay on the ABC and everything?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, of course. We got any more questions?
Can you explain the cascading model a little bit better? I don't know.
Yes. Let me, I'm gonna pull up that specific PowerPoint. I think we talked about that most recently.
Yeah, I think it was like chapter 7 or something, was it? I think.
Can you see this cascading model? Or
No.
am I still in the study guide?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, we got it now.
Mhm.
Yes, we can see the model now.
So your cascading model starts off with this is when we're talking about providing behavior support for our students. So your first step is going to be defining a problem behavior. Your second step would be conducting this assessment for how you're going to best provide support. 3 is after you complete these assessments, you're going to design an individualized behavior support plan. After you've designed this plan, you're going to implement it, and then in step 4, you'll make sure that you're ensuring fidelity of how it's implemented. And that just means that you are making sure that the plan is being put into place as you intended it to be. So everyone on the team is on the same page of how we put this plan into place and how we go about making it work. And then the last step is just monitoring how the plan impacts your students' behavior and your students' lifestyle or quality of life. And then at step 5, if you are noticing that this isn't working or it's missing something, then you can adapt it and you go back to step 2 to get more assessments, get more information, and make this better for your students. Please don't spend a lot of time memorizing this. The question, it's a multiple choice question, and it's just going to be asking you about the main steps. So just focus on 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Don't worry about this AB bullet point mess.
Cool.
Yeah. We got anything else? I want to touch on this while I'm in this presentation. You're going to have a question on when an individualized positive behavior support plan are needed, and it's going to be a written response, so you won't be able to pick from a multiple choice question. So these are the 3 situations when you would need to consider an individualized positive support plan for students. And this is when a student's behavior concerns the health and safety of themselves, their peers, or staff members, or other people in their life. Another one would be when their behavior interferes with their educational program or the education of other students. And lastly, a last situation would be if the behavior places the student at risk for losing an inclusive placement or being placed in a more restrictive setting. Just wanted to touch on that. Any more questions? Okay, let's talk about criterion referenced and norm referenced assessments. Any norm referenced assessment is the student's score is compared to a normative representation of what students their age would be expected to score at. So IQ tests are an example of a norm referenced assessment. So if a student is given an IQ test and then their score would be, it's on a nice bell-shaped scale of what their score is, a representation of and a comparison to what students their age should be scoring at. So you probably won't use a lot of norm reference tests in your classroom. Those are more like, a lot of state assessments are norm referenced because they compare students to other students that take this test, other students in the grade. And then a criterion referenced assessment is when a student's score on an assessment is compared to some type of criteria. So that would be any type of test that you probably designed for your classroom. If you create a test on the standards that you taught in your language arts class, then you're testing students on their ability to meet the criteria of the state standards that you taught them. Are we okay on norm versus criterion test assessments?
Yeah, I just had a quick question about that. Like, is that like when they say like the teacher-based test or like the teacher-made test? That's what that is?
Yep, teacher-made tests, teacher-based tests, those are criterion referenced.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other pressing issues we need to take care of for the midterm? Would would you guys want me to re-upload or upload this one with some notes that I added from tonight? Yeah, absolutely. I'll do that after we're finished with this. I also uploaded the a draft, or not a draft, a sample of an IEP onto our Brightspace page. If you have not been able to see that yet, it is under checkpoint 2. I hope that that was helpful for you.
I only had one more question. When the part of the study guide, when it's under planning adaptations, when it says only as specialized as necessary, I just wanted to see about that one real quick.
So these are 2 different questions. So planning adaptations, that question is all about the what are some considerations you need to make when planning adaptations. So we talked about things like making sure it fits with the student's quality of life, making sure it fits with a student's plans, a student's goals. And that kind of also goes into this one, only as specialized as necessary. Anytime we're thinking about a student with disabilities or planning any part of their educational program, we always want to be asking ourselves that question, only as specialized as necessary, because we don't want to be loading on unnecessary supports for students and unnecessary goals and things like that, because that starts to limit them and take them away from the inclusive setting that we're hoping all of our students can be in. Are we okay on both of those? Anything else?
The benefits of observation in natural environment. What is that?
So when we are gaining all that assessment data on our students to determine their needs, one of the ways we can do that is through observing our student. And we talked about observing our students in their natural environment, or the environment where skills and behaviors are naturally used. So when we observe our students, when we get to observe them in the natural environment, we get to really see what they can actually do. So if I'm trying to get information on my student for how they work with their peers, just pulling 3 students plus this one student I'm trying to watch into a room and saying, okay guys, play with these blocks together. I wouldn't get as much information as if I was just watching my student play on the playground naturally. That's a more natural way for our students to be working with each other. So when I observe in the natural environment, I'm getting higher quality information about my students' skills, and I'm getting more information.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and say if you're good to go, you're good to go. I'll hang out here for anyone if you want to talk about anything, midterm, field experiences, whatnot. I'll be here. Again, next Wednesday, I'll have those optional office hours if you want to pop in. And if you cannot be there on Wednesday and you really want to meet with me, just send me an email and we can meet and figure something else out. So I want to make sure you feel as good as you can for your midterm. So thank you all. I will make sure that I upload this onto Brightspace as soon as our class is over.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Of course,
Thank
guys.
you. Good night.
Good night.
I actually have a quick question.
Yeah.
And this is kind of like off topic.
Do you want me to stop recording?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. Give me 1 second. Let me